was supposed to be an ordinary day by the water. Families gathered. Friends laughed. The ocean rolled in quietly, just as it always had. No one there believed that, within minutes, Bondi Beach would become the center of a national tragedy, one that would leave lives lost, questions unanswered, and a story far deeper than the headlines ever revealed. In the first hours after the attack, the media moved fast. Breaking news alerts, shocking footage, urgent speculation. But as the cameras packed up and attention shifted elsewhere, investigators continued working behind the scenes, uncovering details the public would only learn later. Details that would change how this attack was understood. Details that explained how close the situation came to becoming far worse. And details that revealed how one ordinary man's split-second decision likely saved lives. Before we go any further, if you value fact-based true crime storytelling, the kind that looks beyond the headlines, take a moment to like this video, share it, and subscribe. It may feel small, but it directly helps stories like this reach people who actually care about the truth. And as you listen, leave a comment with your thoughts on this case and where you're watching from. Your voice matters here, because remembering is how stories like this don't fade into silence. The attack unfolded on what should have been a day of celebration along Sydney's coastline. Bondi, normally defined by sunlight, movement, and calm, was hosting a public gathering that brought families, children, and community members together near the shoreline. Shortly after the event was underway, the atmosphere shifted. What began as confusion-sharp sounds that some initially mistook for something harmless quickly turned into unmistakable danger. Within moments, the realization spread through the crowd that this was not an accident, not fireworks, and not something that could be ignored. Panic followed almost immediately. People ran in every direction, abandoning shoes, bags, anything that slowed them down. Entire sections of the beach emptied in seconds as instinct took over. Parents searched for children. Friends grabbed one another and moved without knowing exactly where safety was, only that they had to get away. For many who were there, the shock wasn't just the violence itself. It was how sudden it was, how close it felt, and how completely it shattered the sense that this was a place where something like this could never happen. By the time emergency calls began flooding in, Bondi Beach was no longer a scene of celebration. It had become an active crime scene, one that authorities would soon realize was far more complex and far more dangerous than initially understood for those caught in the middle of it. The experience was disorienting and terrifying. Witnesses later described a moment where time seemed to fracture, where confusion lasted just long enough to become dangerous. Some people froze, unsure of what they were hearing. Others moved immediately, pulled by instinct rather than understanding. Within seconds, the beach transformed into a wave of motion, people running uphill, ducking behind barriers, hiding wherever they could find cover. Many would later say the most frightening part was not just the sound of gunfire, but how long it seemed to last. Not a single moment, not a brief burst, but minutes that felt endless. Parents shielded their children. Strangers pulled one another along. There was only survival. Several witnesses recalled realizing the danger only after seeing others run. That realization triggered a chain reaction, emptying the area with shocking speed. What had been crowded moments earlier became eerily silent, broken only by sirens approaching in the distance. Long after they reached safety, many said the same thing. They couldn't process what had happened while it was unfolding. Only later did the fear fully set in, once they understood how close they had come to being caught in something far worse. It was in the middle of that chaos, while people were still trying to escape, that a single, decisive moment would alter the course of the attack. as panic spread and people ran for their lives. One moment cut through the chaos quietly at first, and then with lasting significance. Video footage from the scene would later show a man moving toward danger, not away from it. While others fled, he closed the distance. Not with hesitation, not with a plan, but with the instinctive urgency of someone who understood that every second mattered. The attacker was still armed. The threat was still active. And yet, in that brief window, the man saw an opportunity. What followed was a physical struggle that unfolded in seconds but carried enormous consequences. The weapon was wrestled away. The attacker lost control. And just like that, the situation shifted. Police would later confirm that this intervention likely prevented further loss of life. There was no coordination, no protective gear, no expectation of survival. Just a split-second decision made in the middle of fear and confusion. In true crime analysis, moments like this are rare. They don't erase tragedy, but they interrupt it. And as investigators continued piecing together what happened at Bondi that day, this act would stand out as one of the most critical turning points in the entire case. The man who intervened was not a security officer. He was not law enforcement. He had no formal training that prepared him for what he did next. He was an ordinary civilian later identified by family as a father, a local worker, and someone known in his community for a quiet, unremarkable life. He did not arrive at Bondi that day expecting to make a life-or-death decision. He arrived like everyone else to enjoy a moment by the water. According to those who know him, his actions were not driven by heroism as a concept, but by instinct. He saw an immediate threat to people around him, families, children, strangers, and reacted before fear could override him. During the struggle, he was injured and would later require medical treatment. Even then, those close to him emphasized the same point. He never viewed himself as a hero. He acted because someone had to and because there was no time to wait. In the days that followed, his story spread quickly. Not because he sought attention, but because it represented something rare in true crime narratives: an interruption of violence by ordinary courage. But while public attention focused on that moment, investigators were already turning their attention elsewhere, working to understand how this attack happened, how it unfolded, and what dangers may have still remained. Emergency calls reached authorities within minutes of the first shots being fired. What followed was a rapid, multi-agency response as police, paramedics, and emergency services moved toward Bondi Beach. Officers arriving on scene were faced with a rapidly evolving situation. The immediate priority was clear, neutralize the threat, secure the area, and locate any additional suspects. Portions of the beach and surrounding streets were quickly locked down as first responders worked through the chaos left behind. Police would later confirm that one attacker was fatally wounded at the scene, while another was taken into custody and transported to hospital under heavy guard. Up to that point, investigators still did not know whether the threat had fully ended. As the area was secured, emergency crews shifted focus to the injured. Victims were triaged on site before being transported to nearby hospitals. For many families, those hours were defined by uncertainty, waiting for news, searching for loved ones, and trying to understand what had just happened. Behind the visible response, investigators began constructing a timeline. Witness statements were collected. Video footage was reviewed. And attention turned to whether the attackers had acted alone or if something larger had been planned. It would soon become clear that the danger did not end with the arrest. In the days following the attack, investigators worked to piece together the full picture. And several key facts emerged that had not been clear in the immediate Media coverage. Police confirmed that the two attackers were related to father and son and that the attack had been carefully planned. One of the men died at the scene, while the other remained in critical condition under police custody. Authorities clarified that the scale of the attack could have been far worse. But the quick actions of both civilians and first responders prevented further casualties. Further, investigation revealed the presence of a vehicle containing improvised explosive devices linked to the suspects. The bomb disposal unit was called in, and the devices were safely neutralized, highlighting the broader danger that was narrowly avoided. Authorities also clarified earlier reports and corrected misinformation that had circulated in the media. Rumors about additional attackers and unrelated threats were investigated and found to be unfounded. Police emphasized that while the headlines had moved on, their work was ongoing and many details would not be immediately released to protect the integrity of the investigation. These confirmations offered a clearer understanding of the scope of the attack, the bravery involved, and the precision required to secure the scene. They also revealed the limits of what was visible in the first chaotic hours, showing how much more there was to learn once the cameras and crowds had departed. Even after police confirmed key facts, many questions remained. Authorities worked to determine the motive behind the attack. Early reports suggested personal grievances, but investigators were cautious, emphasizing that nothing could be assumed until all evidence was reviewed. Interviews, digital forensics, and community inquiries were ongoing. The investigation also focused on how the attackers obtained weapons and whether any outside individuals had knowledge of the plan. Police stressed that these inquiries were complex, requiring time and careful verification. At this stage, the public was left with uncertainty. Why did this happen? Could it have been prevented? And what led an ordinary beach day to turn into a near tragedy? These questions were as much about human behavior as they were about law enforcement operations. Police officials repeatedly underscored that their updates represented confirmed facts only. Speculation, social media claims, and unverified theories were discouraged. The focus remained on piecing together the exact sequence of events and understanding the broader context of the attack. Even weeks later, some details were withheld from public view to preserve the investigation. A reminder that the truth often unfolds gradually, and headlines rarely tell the full story. In the days following the attack, official statements provided clarity, reassurance, and a sense of collective grief. Police emphasized the bravery of civilians and first responders, highlighting the actions that prevented further loss of life. Authorities reiterated that the investigation was ongoing, and they appealed to the public for patience and verified information, warning against spreading rumors. Government officials addressed the nation, condemning the violence and affirming their commitment to public safety. They expressed sympathy for the victims and their families, acknowledging the courage displayed by ordinary citizens under extraordinary circumstances. Community leaders also spoke out, encouraging unity in the face of fear and reminding the public that, while the attack was shocking, it did not define the character of Bondi or its residents. Vigils were held, and social media became a platform for solidarity, sharing stories of bravery, survival, and compassion. This coordinated response helped the public process the event, balancing the shock with recognition of resilience, and set the tone for a narrative that would move beyond sensational headlines to focus on truth, accountability, and recovery. The attack left an undeniable mark on the Bondi community and the nation at large. Even after the immediate threat had been neutralized, the psychological and emotional impact persisted. Families who had been present carried lingering fear, and the sense of safety in public spaces was temporarily shaken. Local authorities reviewed security measures at beaches and public events, implementing new protocols to prevent a repeat of such incidents. Emergency response teams reflected on what had worked and what could be improved, ensuring that lessons from this attack would inform future preparedness. The hero's intervention remained a symbol of courage, inspiring discussion about how ordinary individuals can influence outcomes in extraordinary circumstances. Yet, the incident also sparked deeper reflection on human vulnerability, the unpredictability of violence, and the importance of vigilance without succumbing to fear. Nationally, the attack prompted conversations about law enforcement readiness, public safety policies, and community resilience. While headlines faded, the lessons endured, shaping public awareness and influencing both policy and personal behavior in subtle but lasting ways. The aftermath highlighted that true crime is not just about the event itself, but about the ripples it creates socially, emotionally, and institutionally. Looking back at the Bondi Junction attack, several truths emerge beyond the immediate headlines. First, the role of ordinary courage cannot be overstated. One person's split-second decision altered the course of the day and likely saved lives. In true crime narratives, such moments are rare but pivotal. They remind us that heroism often exists in ordinary bodies facing extraordinary circumstances. Second, the attack exposed vulnerabilities in public safety and emergency response. But it also highlighted the effectiveness of rapid police action and coordinated efforts by first responders. The aftermath showed that even amid chaos, structured response and community vigilance can reduce harm. Finally, this event underscores the importance of patience in understanding true crime. Early reports are rarely complete. Facts emerge gradually, and the narratives that survive the initial headlines are often the ones that carry the most meaning: facts confirmed, context provided, and lessons learned. In essence, the Bondi Junction attack is a case study not just in violence, but in courage, resilience, and the slow uncovering of truth. The story extends beyond what was visible in the moment, and it challenges both authorities and the public to reflect, learn, and act responsibly. I'm Detective B, if you're fascinated by real life, mysteries, and criminal investigations. Tap like, subscribe, and share your opinion in the comments. I'd love to know where you're watching from and what you think about today's case. Make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new episode. Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, and remember, in true crime, the line between fact and perception is often thinner than we realize.